When I arrived in Japan for my spring vacation, I was eager to immerse myself in everything. The cherry blossoms, the food, the energy of Tokyo. It was my first time traveling alone, and something about the city's pulse made me feel alive. My days were filled with sightseeing, but my nights, they belonged to the train. Public transportation in Japan is known for its efficiency, but the last train of the night carried an atmosphere of its own. The lights were dimmer, the passengers fewer, and the silence heavier. At first it felt peaceful. Then it felt wrong. I noticed it on my third night. I had been riding the same line back to my hotel, exhausted from a long day of exploring. The train was nearly empty, save for a few salarymen and dozing students. But there was something strange. A single seat at the end of the carriage was always vacant. Even when the train was crowded, no one sat there. Curious, I asked a fellow passenger about it. A woman in a business suit, her face pale under the flickering fluorescent lights, gave me a sideways glance and simply said, "Don't." That was it. Just one word, but it clung to me. By the fourth night, my curiosity got the better of me. As I stepped into the train, my eyes locked onto that seat. It was just a seat, empty, ordinary, but the air around it felt heavy, as if the space itself was refusing to be filled. Ignoring the unease curling in my stomach, I sat down. The cold hit me instantly, not just the kind that sends a shiver up your spine, but the kind that burrows into your bones. I gritted my teeth, hugging myself as a faint pressure pressed against my chest. And then I smelled it. Water. Stagnant, heavy water. Like the scent of a river that had swallowed too many secrets. The hair on my arms stood on end. I swallowed hard, refusing to give in to the rising fear. It was just a trick of my mind. Maybe the train's air conditioning was too strong. Maybe the day's exhaustion was playing games with me. Then I saw the reflection. In the window across from me, a figure sat in the empty seat beside mine. A woman. Her hair was long, dripping wet. Her skin pale and swollen. Her kimono soaked through clung to her frail frame. I turned my head sharply. Nothing. I looked back at the reflection. She was still there. And this time she was looking at me. My breath caught in my throat. I told myself not to move. Not to react. Maybe she was never really there. Maybe if I just ignored her. A wet hand brushed against my arm. I bolted. Nearly tripping over my own feet, I launched myself across the carriage. The other passengers didn't even flinch. No one else seemed to notice. My chest rose and fell in sharp, uneven breaths as I gripped the handrail by the door, refusing to look back. The next station arrived, and I stumbled out, my legs barely able to carry me. The train's doors slid shut behind me, and for a moment, I thought I was safe. Then as the train pulled away, I saw her, standing on the other side of the glass, watching. I didn't take the train the next night. I convinced myself I was being paranoid, that jet lag and exhaustion were making me hallucinate. I walked back to my hotel instead, even if it took twice as long. But Tokyo at night was a different kind of eerie. Shadows stretched too far. Whispers carried on the wind with no source. Still, it was better than sitting on that train again. But on my last night in Japan, I had no choice. It was late. Too late. I had wandered further than I meant to, and my feet ached from days of relentless exploring. A taxi would have been expensive, so against my better judgment, I made my way to the station. The train was nearly empty again. My heartbeat quickened as I stepped inside. I forced myself to sit far from that seat, gripping my bag tightly on my lap. My eyes darted around, scanning every passenger, every shadow, every reflection. At first, nothing happened. Then the lights flickered. The air turned frigid. The train rumbled through the dark tunnel, and I saw it. The reflection. She was back. But this time she wasn't in the seat. She was standing, behind me. My breath turned shallow. I clenched my fists, willing myself not to turn around. If I didn't see her, maybe she couldn't see me. My pulse pounded in my ears as I waited for the train to reach the next stop. Just a few more minutes, I could make it. But then the train didn't stop. The station blurred past, its platform eerily empty. The voice came next. A whisper directly in my ear. "Why did you take my seat?" My body locked up, frozen in place. I wanted to scream, to run, but the train was still moving. My own reflection stared back at me in the window, and behind it I saw her face, rotting, drowned. Her mouth moved, but her voice came from all around me. "Give it back." The train jolted violently, and the lights went out completely. My breath hitched. Darkness swallowed everything, and for a moment, I felt weightless, as if the train was no longer on its tracks. but floating, suspended in some endless void. A wet hand gripped my shoulder. The train screeched as it finally reached the next stop. The doors slammed open. Without thinking, I ran. I didn't care where I was. Didn't care how far I had to walk, I just needed to get away. I didn't stop running until I reached my hotel. My hands shook as I fumbled with the key card, nearly dropping it twice before forcing myself inside. I locked the door, checked the windows, sat on the bed and willed my heartbeat to slow. It was over. Or so I thought. The bathroom sink dripped. The air smelled faintly of stagnant water. And in the mirror, she stood behind me, dripping, watching, waiting. I never took the train again.